Hi scholars, this is William again, and in this video, the second in the series on communication apprehension, we're going to be talking about psychological apprehension or psychological stress. You'll remember from the overview video that there are actually two distinctly different conditions, and we call both of them stress, and one of those is psychological. So what we're going to be doing in this video is I want to talk to you about the symptoms of psychological stress, and that way you can diagnose that this is what you're feeling. And then we're going to be talking about the causes and how to reverse those causes. Now these symptoms are progressive, which means the first symptom tends to lead to the second, which leads to the third. So the first symptom of psychological stress is negative thinking. Now the easiest way to understand negative thinking is to contrast it with positive thinking. With positive thinking, we focus on what we want to have happen. So I hope I get this job. I hope I get that date. I hope that I am able to communicate my ideas, and I hope that they understand the idea that I'm trying to inform them of. Okay. In other words, we're focused on what we do want to have happen. With negative thinking, by contrast, now we're focused on what we don't want to have happen. I hope I don't forget my speech. I hope I don't make a fool out of myself. Okay. Now we're thinking about what we don't want to happen. Now this plays into fundamental weaknesses of our subconscious mind. And we've all probably heard of the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is talked about a lot as being very powerful, and it is, but it has two very important weaknesses. The first weakness is that it doesn't understand negative language. Words like not, it doesn't understand, so it drops it. It's almost like a cough. So when you're thinking, don't forget my speech, don't forget my speech, don't forget my speech, your subconscious is thinking, do forget my speech, do forget my speech, do forget my speech, because it drops the not. It's kind of like everybody for just a moment, don't think about chocolate cake. Okay, as soon as we hear don't think about chocolate cake, bam, we think about chocolate cake. So if you're like on a diet or something, you're like, don't think about chocolate cake, or don't think about chocolate cake, your subconscious is hearing, do think about chocolate cake, do think about chocolate cake, do think about chocolate cake. Okay, so when we think in negative terms, our subconscious mind begins to think in the opposite terms because it drops the not. The second thing about the subconscious is that it does not discern fact from fiction. So, in other words, what you imagine, your subconscious actually experiences. This is the reason if you're watching a really scary movie, intellectually you know that you're not at all in danger. In fact, the characters in the movie that are about to get killed, those people aren't actually in any danger at all. But we still have a physiological reaction towards what we're watching, even though it's not real. Or if you go on a roller coaster ride. You go on a roller coaster ride and it's like, oh, that thing is so scary. Here's the thing. That roller coaster ride is as safe as like kiddie rides. It's as safe as driving across a bridge. In fact, in some ways, it's probably safer than driving across a bridge because it's held to the same engineering standards of safety, but that roller coaster is probably inspected every single day, where the bridge probably isn't. So the point here being is that this negative thinking begins to think about like, do forget my speech, do forget my speech, or do make a fool out of myself, do make a fool out of myself. And your subconscious mind begins to imagine it actually happening. And so the negative thinking ends up progressing to what we call daymares or nightmares. For those of you not familiar with the term daymare, a daymare is daydreaming that goes horribly bad. Here we actually begin to imagine it happening. Have you ever imagined having an argument with somebody and you actually begin to get irritated at that person? Despite the fact that they're not participating in this argument at all, it's all in your imagination, and intellectually you know that, but you begin to get irritated about it. Or you wake up from a bad dream and you're actually like upset, even though the dream that you just dreamed did not happen. As soon as you wake up and you realize, okay, that was a dream, whatever you dreamt about, you know is not real. But we still have a physiological reaction. So these daymares and nightmares that come from that. We begin to imagine ourselves forgetting our speech. We begin to imagine ourselves making a fool out of ourselves at the job interview or when we ask somebody on a date or whatever is causing the apprehension. We begin to imagine it going bad. This leads to dread. Humans by nature are pleasure seekers and pain avoiders. So as we begin to imagine ourselves making a fool out of ourselves and experiencing social or emotional pain, then we begin to dread the experience. We begin to just not want to do it. And that leads very quickly to seeking escape or avoidance. Sometimes in the public speaking class, for example, or any class where speech is involved, you oftentimes hear people say, I just want to get this over with. I just want to get this done. The goal changes. The goal of doing a good job, the goal of getting your point across, of persuading somebody of something, the goal of getting that job, the goal of getting that date, whatever it is, it suddenly begins to get clouded away from the goal is get it over with. Regardless of the outcome, I just want this done. Now, we'll use public speaking as an example, but the same thing applies to the other context as well. If you can give a good 5-minute speech in a work environment, you can advance your career, your agenda, and your organization in a way that takes your competitor 2.5 hours to accomplish through conversation. And public speaking is unique in that ability. In conversation, you can have a conversation with a few people and get your point across, not only through your words, but through paralinguistics and delivery that can accomplish something that no other skill can accomplish. Sometimes people say, well, I could send them an email. That's like a 4 or 5 page email. Who do you think is going to read it? If you've ever gotten a long email from somebody and you're reading it and you see all these typos, you realize they didn't even read it. If the person who cared enough to write the email doesn't care enough to read it, what is the likelihood that a lot of other people are going to as well? No. In a face-to-face engagement, you get to maintain their attention. You get to actually make sure that this message is getting across. And again, your paralinguistics and your delivery is going to make a huge impact, a huge difference on that. So let's say you're supposed to give a 5-minute talk. And here you have this unique ability to advance your career, agenda, and organization. But yet, when you're feeling this dread, you just want to get it over with. If somebody came up to you and said, hey, listen, I know you're busy. Why don't you go ahead and let me do the speech? You don't have to worry about it. We would agree. What? Now it's that person's career, agenda, and organization that gets advanced at the expense of yours. And you might think, that's okay, but it's not just you. It's everybody that's depending on you. Now, I'm a member of a school board of a public charter school, and we have about twice as many people trying to get into our school than we have slots for them. And we have debated and discussed, we've got to try to expand to get more kids into this opportunity. And we don't want to turn away anybody. But I will tell you that having been in education, not just on that school board, but in education for a super duper long time now, the best opportunities don't necessarily go to the most deserving child. And as much as we may want it to, I've done a lot of consulting work in human resources. I can tell you that employers generally don't hire the best applicant. They don't promote the best applicant. They hire and promote the applicant that is best advocated for. That's the person that gets the job. That's the person that gets the promotion. We have in our country great educational opportunities that are financially free to the people receiving them, completely free. So who gets them? If it isn't whoever can bid the highest price, who gets it? The child who gets the best educational opportunities are the children who have parents who advocate well for them. The other kids get kind of everything else, which hopefully is good and worthwhile. That should certainly be our goal, but just understand that your ability to advocate effectively is going to impact not only you, but causes that you care about. Do not trust that this world is going to do the right thing. The world doesn't necessarily do the best idea, it does the idea best advocated for. And so your ability to effectively engage with people is extremely important. And this psychological stress can affect that, including with us being willing to turn that power over to somebody else to advance what they're trying to advance. So what causes this? What causes us to be so fundamentally irrational as to give up the opportunity to be the advocate, to be able to give the speech or have the meeting and engage with people? Well, the cause of all psychological stress is something called cognitive distortions. Cognitive distortions are thinking errors. And so we have a distorted view of what is real. You can think of it like you're looking at a funhouse mirror and you believe that's how you actually look. So you have a distorted perception of the world. And these three, and there's a lot of cognitive distortions out in the world. In economics, they have an entire subdiscipline called behavioral finance. And behavioral finance basically is just teaching you cognitive distortions and how to overcome them. Our friends in behavioral science or psychology, they have entire classes teaching these cognitive distortions. For our purposes, there are three that lead to this psychological communication apprehension. The first one is called black or white thinking, or false dichotomous thinking. Black or white thinking is the mistaken belief that there are two possible outcomes. I win or I lose. I succeed or I fail. Translated into some of the examples we've been giving, I get the job or I don't get the job. I get the date or I don't get the date. I don't know, whatever it happens to be. The real world isn't actually these two extremes. It's not win and lose. Instead, it's various shades of gray, this huge continuum in which winning and losing is not actually, certainly not common, and you'd be hard-pressed to find an example that actually has those extremes as the only two outcomes. So let me give you an example. First, I'll give you an example that I'm sure many of you probably immediately thought of when I said that there's typically not winning and losing, and that is games, sports. So let me give you an example that demonstrates it's an illusion. It's not actually true. So let's say you join a city soccer league, and you guys play games every Saturday. You go into a game on a Saturday, and you guys lose the game 10-0. Now, for those of you not familiar with soccer, that's pretty bad. If I translated that into American football, that would be the 70-0. The other team scored 10 times, you scored none. Now, it's very easy, of course, to think, well, that was a complete loss. But was it? Do you suppose in that game that you learned how to play the game better? I mean, if nothing else, watching the other team, you probably learned a few things. As you guys were frantically trying to, innovate new defenses to try to slow them down, it's like, okay, we can't play them one-on-one, so I'll come from this side, you come from that side, the other one come up the middle, we'll try to, trap them. You're starting to try to come up with other ways to play. Desperately trying to figure out defenses to slow them down and offenses to get at least a shot on goal. You think you got exercise in that game? Yeah. Probably spent the whole game frantically running around chasing them. Now, learning the game better and improving your physical conditioning is now going to improve your play in every soccer game you play for the rest of your life at the cost of one game. Next week, you're going to be a better team because of this loss. The week after that, you're going to be a better team because of this loss. 2 years from now, you're going to be a better player because of this loss. So one loss gives you an increased chance of winning every game you play for the rest of your life. Was that a complete loss? See, I would suggest to you it definitely wasn't a complete loss. Now put yourself on the other team. You won 10-0. Well, it was a win. You got the W, but was it a complete win? Do you suppose a member of that team learned very much? No, the other team really probably didn't have much to teach you. It was just a practice where there was another team present. Do you think you guys got a lot of exercise? Were you frantically running around trying to slow the other team down? No, you're just waiting for the game to kind of develop. Your idea of teamwork in that game was probably whose turn is it to score. So the team that lost 10-0 gained a whole bunch for future games, but the team that won 10-0, they won the game. So it wasn't a complete loss, but it wasn't a complete win, because the opponent you play next week, they may have improved this week and you didn't. So that's how the real world works. If you go in for a big job interview and you really, really want this job and you don't get the job, it's easy to think I lost, I failed. But by going through that experience, you learn the kind of questions that they ask in that industry. Some of your weaknesses were pointed out to you so that you know what to work on, and you were able to practice under the gun. We do these mock interview practices. They're not the same thing because you know that this person isn't looking to hire you and your job isn't on the line for you. It's different having an experience where you're actually in a job interview. These experiences and lessons are going to benefit you for every job interview you have for the rest of your life at the cost of one. So, the world isn't actually black or white. The world is actually various shades of gray. And we're already over 15 minutes. I apologize for that. I probably should just give up on my goal of making these 10 to 15 minutes. Rather than breaking this topic up into 2 videos, though, I'm just going to continue and finish with these. So the black or white thinking, the belief that we have that there's winners and losers, I succeed or I fail, it leads into the second cognitive distortion, which is unreasonable expectations. Think to yourself, do you believe that you're perfect? If you're healthy, no, you don't. But unreasonable expectations is that we expect perfection from ourselves. Now, in the kinesics lecture video, we talk about how our eyes are drawn to what we engage with, what interests us. If you take a 50-question test, you get the test back, and 48 are right and 2 are marked wrong, where do your eyes go? The 2 that are marked wrong. You basically almost ignore the 48 that are right, and you focus on the 2 that are wrong. If you give a 5-minute speech and 4 minutes and 45 seconds go great, 15 seconds go bad, do you sit down celebrating the 4 minutes and 45 seconds that went well? Probably not. You probably focus in on the 15 seconds that went bad. If you have an 8-hour day and 7 hours and 45 minutes go great and 15 minutes go bad, you're probably not celebrating the 7 hours and 45 minutes that went well. You're probably thinking, I had a terrible day, and the boss yelled at me for those 15 minutes. So, sometimes when I mention this, a hand shoots up and somebody says, well, maybe it's because it stood out. It was the rare part. Therefore, it contrasts and it stands out for you. Okay, fine. You get that 50-question test back, you got 2 right and 48 marked wrong. You celebrating now because the 2 right stand out? Of course not. That 5-minute speech, okay, 4 minutes and 45 seconds go bad, 15 seconds go well. Does the 15 seconds that went well still stand out? Of course not. See, it doesn't work in reverse. So now connect these 2. Black or white, I succeed or I fail. And success is I don't make a mistake. But intellectually, we know we're not perfect and mistakes are going to come. And that leads to the third one, magnification. Magnification, sometimes called catastrophizing, is when we take something that is this important and we turn it into something this important. In other words, we exaggerate how bad this is going to be, how big of a problem this is going to be. When I'm teaching the public speaking class and students come into my office hour, this is one of the very few weeks that I actually have visitors during office time. And the most common thing they say, though, is they come in, they go, I'm really stressed about this speech. Do you have any advice? And of course, what I do is I ask them, can you tell me what the stress is like? I mean, what symptoms do you have? Trying to determine do they have primarily physical stress or psychological. When it's psychological, I focus here. Can you tell me the nightmare? What is the bad thing that's going to happen to you? And their answer is all the same. They're never concerned I'm going to get a bad grade or whatever. It's I'm going to make a fool out of myself. And they call it something different. I'm going to look stupid, or people are going to laugh at me, or whatever. But basically, they're fearing the public judgment. And that's understandable. So let me tell you a little bit about your audience. In public speaking, the audience isn't actually that concerned about your delivery. It isn't a matter of you making a fool out of yourself. If you've ever, if you had a job and you've been at an employee meeting and the manager is announcing new policies to everybody, you're probably not listening to this thinking, did you hear that? Yeah, she paused for 2 seconds. That's, should have only been a second longest. She stuttered. Yeah, I noticed she's looking at her notes a little too much. We don't pay attention to that. Your audience pays attention to the content. They're interested in how do these new policies affect me? How do they affect my friends? How do they affect my family? And that's what we're concerned with. And that's what you want them concerned with. We teach you how to deliver your speech well. So that way, when you're delivering the speech, you have a better chance of getting your message across the way you intended. When we talk about conversation and interpersonal, we don't teach you because people are going to be paying a lot of attention to the delivery of your conversation, how you manage the conversation. Instead, it's so when you have a conversation that you can have it and accomplish whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish with that conversation. In terms of managing conflict, we teach you managing conflict so that you can manage the conflict better, not so much in the words that you say or whatever. So most people are focused on content. The second group might be focused on your delivery, but they're rooting for you. That's actually innate in our humanity. We have something called a mirror nervous system. We actually root for one another. That's why if you're watching somebody else really struggle, you kind of start to feel yourself rooting for them. It's the reason the underdog gets rooted for so often. In Little League Baseball, if you've ever been to a Little League Baseball game, little kid goes up there and he's all excited to bat. And he's not necessarily as athletic as some of the other players, but he's really excited and he's got the bat up. The pitcher throws the ball and the batter swings the bat with all of his strength and he hits the ball. And then the batter takes off running towards first base. Now he hits the ball and just a slow rolls to the pitcher. Pitcher picks up the ball, makes a nice easy throw to first base. And the kid who's just running with all of his strength and all of his effort and enthusiasm, he's out by a mile. But while you're watching the ball get thrown to the first baseman, you see this runner running. If you're like most people, you really kind of hope maybe the first baseman drops the ball. You want this kid to make it. It's just natural for us. And it's something we're born with. If you ever in the hospital and where all the babies are, and one baby starts crying, all the other babies start crying. A lot of times they don't even know what we're crying about. That there's just a certain naturalness to it. So those who are focused on your delivery are likely rooting for you. Oftentimes when I teach public speaking, if somebody's really struggling, and I look around at some of the people in the audience, and you can just tell that they're really rooting for them. And sometimes if the person is stuck, somebody in the audience, one of the students just can't handle it. So tell me a little bit about this. They start prompting the person. So the second group is focused on delivery, but they're rooting for you. Now, so most people are focused on content, which is good. Those who are focused on delivery, rooting for you, that's good. There are a few people in a third group. And these are the people that are focused on delivery and are rooting against you. They want you to fail. So they're the first ones that'll laugh at you, make fun of you, whatever. Strange as this sounds, that's actually good for you. Not because they're jerks, but it's good that they're revealing to you that they want you to fail. So at the cost of somebody laughing at you from a speech, you get to find out that this person is not trustworthy. That is a really good time to learn that, because that's better than you trusting them and them having an opportunity to cause you to fail. Like you trust them on your group or in your group or whatever. It's good to know who it is that is rooting against you. So regardless of the audience's perception, they're focused on content, which will be the vast majority of people. They're not going to notice their minor mistakes. You'll notice them, but they won't. Or the group that is focused on your delivery, but they're rooting for you, or the group that reveals to you that they're untrustworthy. You win regardless of the three. That's in public speaking. Same thing applies in any other part of communication, though. If you're asking somebody on a date for the first time and they say no, you might feel hurt. You might feel like that was a failure since you didn't reach the goal that you had, but you gained experience from that. And them saying no may have been because they see something that you don't. And therefore, the no answer is exactly what you need, is to not be with that person. And the magnification, think about the fact that, okay, you got rejected, but you learned from that, you benefit, you gain from that. And so the key thing with psychological stress is really to recognize when you're experiencing it from the symptoms, look at these causes and say, am I really focused too much on, I hope I don't fail? I hope I succeed. Rather than recognizing the success and failure as a continuum, do I have unreasonable expectations? Can I accept that I'm going to make mistakes? And that's okay. And then magnification, that really the consequences aren't as bad as perhaps I'm making them out to be. Okay, so this video is a little over 25 minutes, and I apologize for that. Next, in the third part of this communication apprehension series, we're going to be talking about physical stress, which is far, far more common. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.